Hey guys, welcome to the Driven Not Given podcast. And as you guys can see from where we're at, we're in a very beautiful location here with my buddy Edwin. Thank you for coming, bro.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man, it's
Long
a long time coming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
that's
we go.
right. That's right. So for those of you guys that may not know, Edwin is actually the founder, the owner of Skyline Security, right? And Skyline
Smart energy.
Smart Energy, right? So I've seen I've seen you on a few podcasts. I've seen your story, and it's a very interesting story. It's one of the most interesting stories I've seen out there, bro. It's a very unique story.
Yeah.
So if we could start off this interview, bro, can you tell the people a little bit about you, how you came to this country and your upbringing?
Yeah. So I was born in Bogota, Colombia. My parents and I came to the U.S. when I was 6 years old in search of that American dream.
Yes.
However, that American dream quickly became an American nightmare because
Right.
due to some unfortunate circumstances, our family lost everything we had.
Right.
So much so that at the age of 15 years old, I had to basically become the man of the house.
Damn.
And at the time, I was lucky enough to get a job working at a call center selling long distance over the phone.
Right.
Now, I was lucky enough to get a job there, but it wasn't an ideal type of job for me because I was very shy.
Okay.
And I was very timid.
Right.
But I quickly got the courage to do this job I did not want to do, just in my desperation to help my family out. Because at this point, I was just tired of seeing my mom not be able to pay for the rent. I was tired of us not having enough food at the end of the month.
Sure.
I was tired of my siblings, mother and I, living in a tiny little bedroom in Huntington Park without any windows.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I was just tired of roaches waking me up in the middle of the night. So the avoidance of pain caused me to take action towards really something that demanded more than I thought I was worth.
Right.
Now, even though I was very timid and I was very shy, man, the one thing I did have going for me, man, I was a big dreamer. I remember 12 years old, you know, well, growing up in Huntington Park, you have like, it's a track school, so you have A, B, C.
Yeah.
And during C-Track, you know, we'd get off, a vacation was like around December time. So most of the time I was alone because my mom had to go work, cleaning offices. And I remember just staying home, and I just would daydream all day about making $100,000 a year by the age of 21.
That was your number.
Yeah, that was my number. I was obsessed with that number. I must have thought of that number thousands of times, if not more. And I didn't know how. I just knew that I was going to do it. I was going to figure it out. So when I got this job working at the call center, I just used common sense. I said, well, if I'm going to make $100,000 by the age of 21, I guess I better become the manager by the age of 18.
Wow.
And then I just started focusing on the only thing I can control at the time, which was I knew I could outwork everybody, and I knew I could prepare. And all these other things that made it seem impossible, like the fact that everybody there was twice my age mostly. People were going to college. People were way better communicators than I was because remember, I was timid and shy. I just felt like God would put the right people in front of me to make the impossible possible if I could just focus on what I could control.
So you say God, you had the faith back then, that early on?
Yeah, my mom would always pray for me. You know, even though, you know, it wasn't the best circumstances where we grew up in that tiny little bedroom with windows.
Sure.
My mom would always pray for me every night.
Nice.
And then she'd pray for me every morning before I go to school.
That's cool.
And she told me I was going to do something great with my life.
She was
And that was part of the prayer, right? And that one day I was going to do so great that I was going to praise his name and stuff. So I went. What allowed me to take on things that demanded more than I thought I was worth was the fact that I felt like God was with me.
Oh, wow.
So it gave me that little extra confidence that you need, you know? So, so
that's such a powerful thing, right? I mean, when you believe that God is with you, and that is a very real thing. When you believe, like people ask me, how you doing, JC? I say, blessed and highly favored. Yeah. It's just, I am blessed and I'm highly favored. And I believe that within me. I believe that the Creator is with me, right?
Yes.
So it's powerful, man.
Yeah, it just gives you that extra advantage, I think.
Yeah.
Just, you know, whatever you believe in, it just gives you that extra confidence.
Right.
And I mean, I think if you ask me what one of my biggest gifts is I've always been incredible with faith. Like I've always I felt like, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it.
Right.
If we just continue to focus on what we can control and just focus on that, focus on our gifts, God would always put the right people in front of us to make the impossible possible. And the story of my life really has been the right people showing up at the perfect time.
Wow.
But it's because I believe that I've taken action before I've had what I've needed.
Sure.
And I think when you do that, it sends a signal to God that you do have faith, and it causes him to act. But a lot of people are waiting for God to act first. And you know, everything in life is reciprocal. If you want something, you have to give it first.
Wow.
So if you want faith to
Powerful.
act on your side, well, you got to take the first step.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of people don't want to take that first step because they let that fear paralyze them.
Right.
You know, at 15 years old, again, I had fear, but I didn't let it paralyze me. I was like, I'm gonna have to give this a shot.
Yes.
Right? And what it did for me is it built my identity.
Right.
It built my self-worth, because one of the ways that you do that is by putting yourself in a circumstance that demands more than you think you're worth, and then succeeding at it.
Right.
So if you really think about that, if something demands more than you think you're worth,
Right.
it's probably going to scare the crap out of you. You're probably not going to want to do it. It's probably going to make you nervous. But the problem is, if you don't step into that arena of uncertainness, you'll never know if you could do it or not.
Right.
Because the only way you believe something in your heart is if you experience it.
Wow.
If you don't experience it, you could talk about it all you want.
Sure.
You're never going to believe it.
Right.
You start believing it when you experience it. And the only way you experience it is if you actually give it a shot. Most people don't even give themselves a shot. That's why their identity never rises.
Right.
Because they're not even giving themselves a shot.
Wow, that is so powerful. And you know, sometimes we don't know how strong we are until we're put in that situation, right? I know many times I've been in situations where it's like, I don't know how I'm going to figure this thing out, but you know what? I'm going to figure it out. And let's try it. Hey, if I fail, I fail.
Exactly.
One of the things I heard you say in an interview was, you said, because you guys lived in Encino, I think it was, and then you ended up in Huntington Park.
So when we first came in the U.S., no, we lived in Glendora.
Oh, Glendora, got it.
So, and we were only there for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Because 2 weeks after we came to the U.S., our home gets raided by law enforcement. Both my parents end up in jail. My sister and I, who's older than me, ended up in a foster home for 8 months.
Oh, shit.
And then my parents came out of jail after that, and then we thought the nightmare was over. However, the nightmare was just beginning, because every year after that, our home would get raided, and they'd come look for Dad.
Wow.
Dad, they couldn't find him.
Right.
And then finally, when I was 10 years old, they did find him, and that's when they put him away for a while. And that's when he said, hey, son, you need to become the man of the house.
Damn.
And I promised him that I would. So at 15 years old, that's another reason I took on something that demanded more than I thought I was worth, because I gave my dad that promise.
Right.
And, you know, if you live for yourself, you can settle for less. But if you live for others, it'll require all of who you are. And I was living for him. I knew you know, he showed me a lot of love, and I wouldn't have been in this country if it wasn't for him.
Yes.
And I know he went through a lot of pain. You know, I used to have to visit him in prison all the time. In fact, I just saw a picture the other day that I hadn't seen ever. And it was us visiting him at the prison.
Oh, wow.
And I immediately got emotional. Like I don't think that's ever happened to me, where I just look at a picture and I get emotional.
Yes.
But I remember we used to go there, you know, twice a month, and you know, we used to go drive to Tehachapi. We used to drive to San Luis Obispo, make those long little drives to visit him.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, and you looked up to your father, right? So that was very hard for you.
Still my hero to this day. Yeah.
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah,
you know, that when you say that, it triggers me a little bit, because for me, I didn't grow up with a father, right? We moved from Mexico, and you know, I haven't seen my father since I was like 4 or 5. But I always knew before I had I have 2 sons. My wife and I, we have 2 sons, and my wife used to actually work for you back in the day.
Yeah, I remember. She's a kick-ass.
Yeah. So what happened is that before I even met her, before we had any children, I knew that I was going to have a son, and I said, I'm going to have a son one day. His name is going to be Maximus, and I'm going to be my son's hero.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Yeah.
Bro, so when you say that, that really hits my heart.
Yeah.
You feel me? So, you know, so he was your hero, and when he went away, how old were you?
10.
Wow.
Yeah, so he left us some money, and about 2 years later, we ran out of money, and that's how we had to move to Huntington Park. And at first, we rented this 3-bedroom apartment, but then we ran out of money, so we couldn't pay for the rent. So then we had to rent 2 of the bedrooms in the 3-bedroom apartment, and that's how my mom and siblings and I lived in that tiny little bedroom. Because at this point, I had 2 younger siblings.
Yeah, in situations like that, right, Edwin, they make you, would you say that the upbringing, right, the stuff that you went through, because you were 10 years old when the SWAT, or they came in?
I was 6 years old when that happened.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And then every year after that, a SWAT team would come, and I don't know if you've ever been part of a raid, but they come in and they literally just flip the house upside down.
Damn.
I mean, literally put everybody on the floor. They didn't put me on the floor because I was a kid, but they put my sister, who was 15 at the time, on the floor.
Damn,
and,
bro.
So.
Wow. So obviously that is a tough situation to be in, right? And then you move in. I grew up in Southgate, right next to. I graduated from Southgate High School. You know, I went to Gage Middle School in Huntington Park, so I'm very familiar.
I went to Gage too.
Oh yeah? Oh, nice. Yeah. I got kicked out from Southgate, right?
Is that
for
how
fighting,
you ended up in
and
Gage?
then I ended up in Gage. Yep.
Okay.
So I remember I used to go.
Wow.
Walk down Gage to take the bus on Pacific to Southgate, right? So I was we would get hit up by gangsters all the time on Gage, bro.
Yeah.
Florence all the time.
Gage was filled with them for a while, for sure.
Oh yeah, bro.
Yeah, I think it was called Middleton.
Yeah,
a lot of them lived down Middleton.
It was crazy, bro. So anyways, but would you say that growing up and going through the things that you went through is part of what made you the entrepreneur and the man that you are today?
I think 1,000%. I mean, I think the thing that stands out for me now, just looking back at those moments, is, you know, when the house would get raided, and my mom, I remember mom would scream, and she'd always scream for me, Edwin, are you okay? And I had to be calm because I didn't want her to worry. And I think one of my strengths is when the pressure's on, I'm calm.
So you said she would scream. What do you mean when you were?
Well, so they'd come, they'd raid the house.
Oh, when they raided the house,
so she was on the floor, and she wanted to know where I was at, and she was like, are you okay, Edwin? And I didn't want her to see me crying.
Right.
So I would just be calm and say, I'm okay, Mom.
Oh, wow.
And I think that taught me to be calm under pressure.
Yes.
You know, and you know, you're always going to have pressure when, I've always tell my guys all the time, the better you are at handling pressure, the better you're going to do in life. The better you are at handling stress, the better you're going to get in life. You know, the better you become solution-oriented versus problem-oriented, you're going to make more money. So, you know, for me, that was going through that tough time. I think that's what
helped
it
you.
Cultivated that calmness under pressure.
It also made you probably, I'm imagining, also made you ambitious.
Yeah, very ambitious, you know, because, you know, I went from being a kid having whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I ever needed something, all I had to do was ask.
Yeah.
And I got it.
Right.
And all of a sudden that gets taken away.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you see your siblings not able to have the kind of stuff that you have.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember we didn't have money for shoes. I mean, we were buying Stadias. That's the only thing. I don't know if you remember that brand, Stadias.
Yeah.
Like wannabe Adidas.
Right.
And Pro Wings. And
Right.
Mom would take me shopping at Pro Wings in Huntington Park. I was like, man.
We go to Payless.
Yeah, Payless. Payless. Yeah. And I remember that. Like, man, I want nicer things. Like,
yes.
You know, and I'm gonna work my butt off to get it.
So at the age of 15, you got a job, I believe it was.
Got the age of 15, and you know, unfortunately, the only bad thing about, well, I mean, I don't regret anything other than I couldn't play sports anymore. I played a lot. That's another great thing my mom did for me. She always put me in sports, so I never had the time.
What sports?
Played a lot of football, a lot of basketball. Those were my kind of two sports. Nice. I played for the HP Spartans. Played for the Downey Razorbacks one year.
Oh wow!
And then basketball at Salt Lake Park, and then karate. I did Taekwondo from 7 years old all the way to 13 years old. That showed me a lot of discipline.
Big time.
I owe a lot of my discipline to Taekwondo, starting at a young age. But those things also taught me how to compete, and taught me that if I worked hard enough, I could get it done.
Yes.
Because with sports, I wasn't the most gifted one. I wasn't.
Me neither.
I never really had the talent that stood out. But man, I would just outwork people in some way, somehow. I'd end up in the starting lineup.
It's true, bro.
So that taught me a lot.
As they say, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, right?
100%. And I think, a lot of times when you have talent, you have arrogance.
Yes.
And when you have discipline, you're confident. There's a big difference.
Right.
Discipline gives you confidence.
I was on your call. I was on your Zoom today. I heard you say that, and I was like, I was driving, so I couldn't take it down. But now we got to record it. So that's powerful. It's so true, man.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's. So at 15, you get the job, right? And you were at the call center, and that's where you started learning sales, because you weren't really a sales kid. You were kind of timid, as you mentioned.
Yeah, so one of the great things that this company did, and it's why I do what I do with my company, is they gave us leadership development, and they used to have us take mindset courses. So from 15 years old all the way to 21 years, an hour a day, every day, before I would get on the phones. They would make me study mindset, communication skills, tonalities, bring your tonality up, down, bring it down, bring it up. They used to teach us all that stuff. We used to role play for an hour. I used to have to sit in front of you for like 30 minutes, and I couldn't blink. And there'd be people trying to get me to make me laugh, and I couldn't laugh.
Really?
I just had to sit there with you, like looking.
They were ahead of their time, bro.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What is that, in the 90s?
Yeah, that's late. 96 is when I got that job. 90. Actually, no. What am I talking about? 94, 93 is when I got the job because I was in high school. 93.
Yeah, yeah.
So from 93 to 99, I was there. So I was there for 6 years, and then when I became, at 18 years old, I finally become the youngest manager in company history.
Wow.
Not because I was the most deserving, but because the 6 people in front of me that were way more talented, that had seniority over me, all got fired for doing things they weren't supposed to do. So I got my shot. So once I got my shot, I started doing pretty well for myself, and then I started to, again, you can only receive what your mind can accept.
Yes.
And my mind started to accept at that point, like, wait, maybe you are worth $100,000 a year because you're already 18 years old and you're managing people that are twice your age, that are going to college. You're making $1,000 a week. And at the time, I didn't really know anybody at 18 years old making $1,000 a week. This is in 96.
Yeah.
So my mind began to accept, like, maybe I am worth $100,000 a year. And, in life, you'll experience that which you're deeply convinced with. So if you're deeply convinced that you belong in poverty, you're going to have poverty. But if you're deeply convinced that you're going to do something great with your life, that's what you'll get. And that's why I often say you don't believe something in your heart until you experience it. So at 18 years old, I had experienced something that made me believe that I was worth $100,000 a year. I wasn't making $100,000 yet. I started making like 60 at that point.
Sure.
52 with bonuses, I was making 60. But I was like, man, I'm already making 60 at 18. That means by 21, I'm making 100. And then the other thing that happened is I became the right hand of the VP of sales and association, right? That's the other thing that builds your identity. You start hanging around with people that are doing better than you. Then you're going to start to do better.
That's why I'm here, man.
There you go. So, I start hanging out with them all the time. He's making $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I start to apply what he's teaching me. So my mind begins to accept, oh, damn, I'm doing everything he's doing. I'm just, the beautiful thing about association is you start realizing that they're not that much different than you. And you start to realize they're not that much more special than you. And if, again, but if you don't hang out with those people, you almost hold them at too much of a pedestal, and it's almost like unattainable. Right. But when you hang out with them, you're like, wait a minute, I can do what this guy's doing. And you begin to accept, you believe, right? And that's why one of the greatest things you could do as a leader is make your juniors believe, because if you can get them to believe something, they'll manifest it.
Yes.
So that's what happened. And at 21 years old, now 3 years later, he comes into my office. He says, hey, Edwin, I'm going to start this home security company from the ground up. He says, I can't guarantee you the $70,000 a year that you make here, but if you make this work, you can possibly double, triple, quadruple what you make here. Wow. And, the first thing I thought, I always say that you don't really have to be that smart to be successful, to make $100,000 or 7 figures. You just got to have common sense, and you got to have some drive. Yes. And that's exactly what I used. I used common sense. I said, this guy's making $250,000 a year. He's resigning because he thinks he could make $1 million in this other industry that is really untapped. I'm like, that sounds pretty reasonable. Second thing I thought was, man, this guy's going to mentor me how to start a company from the ground up. Right. I'm like, this is my shot at the big time. And then the third thing I thought was, I was a big dreamer. At 16, 17, I would ditch 5th and 6th period. It's probably why I ended up with a 1.8 GPA from high school. But I would ditch, and I'd go to Hollywood Hills, I'd go to Beverly Hills, I'd go to Rodeo Drive, I'd look at all the clothes, and then from there I'd go to Hollywood Hills, Beverly Hills, and I was like, man, this is where I need to be. And I call that touching the dream. I was touching the dream at a very young age. Right. And it made my subconscious figure out how to get there. Right. But again, you can't change something that you're not aware of. Right. So if you're not aware of something, how are you supposed to change it? And at the time, it's true. Getting out of my bubble of Huntington Park, because at Huntington Park I was living large. Right? I'm making $70,000 a year. I'm 18 years, at this point, 21 years old. Now I had moved to Southgate. So we're moving up a little bit. So we're in the nice part of Southgate now. And but I was still in Southgate. Yeah. And you know, one of the ways that you eliminate fear is you look at the worst case scenario.
Right.
So when that decision came, I looked at the worst case scenario, which was, okay, if I fail miserably,
right,
I go from living in Southgate to Watts, which is a mile away.
Yeah.
Like, I'm only a mile away from Watts. I was living on Tweedy and Elizabeth.
Yep.
So I'm like,
by the park.
Further down, closer to Pacific.
Got it.
I'm right next door to Watts.
Yeah.
I said, if I fail, I end up in Watts. No, not that much different than the little tiny little bedroom without any windows that I grew up in.
Yeah.
But if I make this work, I end up in the big time. I end up with all the dreams.
I love it.
So everybody thought I was crazy. And then the other thing I looked at too was, I looked at, is $70,000 a year going to be available again?
Right. Oh.
And I thought to myself, yeah, $70,000 a year, that's going to be available again. Like, I can get a job like that.
Yes.
But the opportunity to be mentored by the only guy I knew that was successful at the time, in an industry that was untapped, in an industry that allowed me to make the kind of money that I wanted to make, because I don't want to wait till I was 25 to make $100,000 a year. I wanted to make $100,000 by the age of 21.
Yes.
Remember, I became obsessed with making $100,000 by the age of 21. So I said, this is my shot. You know, and again, to make 6 figures, 7 figures a year, you just need 2 things. You need to find an opportunity that allows you to make that kind of money.
Right.
And then the second,
does it have the potential?
Yeah, does it have the potential? Because if it's got no potential, then what are you doing?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's number one, is finding that opportunity that allows you to make that kind of money. And number 2 is you need to find someone who's done it before, who's got a vested interest in your success that's going to help you do it.
That's awesome.
And if you could do that, then the only reason you wouldn't make that kind of money is if you don't put in the effort. I'm a byproduct of that, right? I found one person.
Yeah.
He gave me an opportunity to make way more money.
Right.
And then he took me under his wing and he showed me how to do it.
Interesting.
And then from there, but again, you don't have to be that smart.
Common sense, like you said.
Common sense and drive.
Because you were doing good at 70 for being 21, living in Southgate in the 90s, 70 grand a year. I mean, shit, you're living large in Southgate in the 90s with that, right? Especially at such a young age. But as I think it's Tim Grover that says, you were doing good, but good is the enemy of great.
Yeah.
So you need to get outside of your comfort zone, take some risk in order to go and do great.
Yeah.
And I think most people, bro, they're just not willing to take a risk. And I heard a long time ago, sounds cliche now because so many people said it, but the biggest risk is not to take a risk.
Amen. Yeah.
Wow.
You know, I say the purpose of a goal is not necessarily to accomplish it, but to become the person that actually attempts it.
Oof.
Right? You want to become the person, because if you never attempt it, you'll never know.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that never attempt it. And again, if you don't attempt it, you can't experience it. And if you can't experience it, you can't believe it. And if you can't believe it, it ain't never going to happen.
My
right?
man, that's
so
right.
It's as simple as that. You know what just came to mind right now was we were talking about 2x2.net.
Right.
And I remember I was 21 years old. I had already bought my Mercedes convertible, right? Because I wanted to be, I'm also very competitive, right?
Yeah,
so I was always finding little ways to excite me.
Right.
And I was like, man, I want to be the first guy in Downey driving around a $100,000 car, right?
Yeah.
Because at 28, I'm like, everybody's driving a $100,000 car at 28. I need to have like 21 while everybody's going to college. I'm freaking smoking them, right? That's how competitive I was, right? And I see this 2x2.net stuff. I start seeing all these guys in Lambos younger than me, and I'm like, what the fuck? Right? But the funny part, I went to one of those meetings, and I forgot what the main guy's name was. But this is, you know.
Dennis Wong?
Yes. You have. There's certain things in your life. There's a lot of things I don't remember.
Right.
Like my friends are like, man, you remember when we partied here? You remember when we partied there? And I'm like, no. You know, but there's certain things that I do remember. And I remember like it was yesterday. He says, if you ain't living north of the Sunset, you haven't made it yet. And I was like, So I was like, man, I'm going to end up in Hollywood Hills. Because remember, at 16 years old, that was my dream.
Yes,
So when I heard him say it, if you're not living in north of Sunset, you haven't made it yet. I was like,
he confirmed it.
He confirmed it. I'm like, that's where I'm going to be.
Yes.
And that freaking drove me like crazy to get that house in Hollywood Hills.
So was that was the first network marketing company you ever were a part of?
Yeah, the first and really only, the first and only. That was the only multi-level company.
Wow. That was my first network marketing company too. So I remember seeing the guys with the Lamborghinis and the 2x2.net stickers, and it was kind of like a boiler room meets network marketing type of company, man. And so, a lot of those guys
I'm a car guy, man. So I was in it to just pick up the cars and go cruising. I think I maybe hit it hard for 3 months, and I was like, man, I did this for 3 months to make $1,000 a week. I'm like, I do this in my job in an hour. What the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
So
you were already doing the door knocking.
Oh, I was freaking crushing it.
So let's go to that transition, right?
Yeah.
You go work with this guy, and how was it when you barely started door knocking for the first time?
So it's funny you asked. So we talked about arrogance, right? So when I resigned, well, I hadn't resigned yet. So I started the security company with them, and I was a little arrogant at the time in that I did so well at the call center that I thought I could just come in here and crush it. So I looked at the presentation. I read it one time. I said, oh, this is a piece of cake. And I never studied it. I just looked at it once.
Wow.
Good. I go out there, and I'm literally winging this thing. I'm trying to sell on personality. Every door I'm saying some different shit, right? And I was scared at every door because ignorance gives you fear. When you don't really know something, you're going to have fear.
Sure.
And you're going to transfer whatever you're experiencing inside.
Right.
So that fear that I was experiencing, I was transferring it to the client.
Right.
So every client was just slamming the door on me. I don't want it. I don't want it.
Right.
I went 10 days without selling.
Oh, shit.
And the only reason I stayed in the business was because my brother-in-law at the time, I don't know if you know Nick, I think Jenny knows Nick, he was doing 2 a day. He was selling 2 every day. And I was like, wait a minute. If this guy's doing it, I should be able to do it. I'm just as good as he. He was one of the managers. I'm one of the managers. I should just be just as good. And I realized that he had burned the ships and I hadn't. See, when I started the security company, I figured out, I convinced my seniors at the call center to change my schedule so that I would go at 7 a.m. and end at 3 p.m.
Got it.
And then from 3 p.m. I'd leave, and then I'd get on the doors at 4 and I'd knock till 10.
Wow.
But the problem was I was knocking without any urgency.
Right, right.
Like, urgency, I call it a necessity level. Necessity level is a sudden willingness that untaps this tremendous amount of ability that you did not know you had.
Right.
And because I hadn't burned the ships, I didn't have urgency. So 10 days after going donut, every day 0, I knew what the problem was, so I went to the call center and I resigned. All of a sudden that weekend, what I couldn't memorize in 10 days, I memorized it over the weekend.
Yeah.
I knew my rebuttals, I knew my presentation. I mean, I was reflexive. You could have stopped me anywhere and I could have, told you a rebuttal and then go back to my presentation. I had that thing down.
Yes.
So I remember that Monday just going out there with so much confidence, and I ended up getting 5 sales in one day. So knowledge gives you confidence. Knowledge when applied gives you confidence. And all it is, now, I was saying this, now I was transferring confidence.
Right.
Because I knew it. The conviction was there, right? And the urgency was there. So I got 5 sales in one day. I remember I couldn't sleep that night because I just started doing the numbers. I was like, man, I made $1,500. And that was back then. They didn't pay me much. I was getting paid $300 a deal. I was like, man, I just made $1,500 in a day. Imagine if I could do this every day. And I started doing. Now you talk about a dreamer, man. I started dreaming all over the place. And then the next day, boom, 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 and it just. I mean, the rest was history.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
So that's such a crazy skill because I've done door knocking before. I started at 18. I wish I would have started at 18 with alarms.
Yeah.
But I was selling pizza coupons and Dodger tickets and stuff like these coupon books, and I made $10 a pop, right? So the goal was to sell 10, but eventually I got into home security, which I'll get into later. But in 2006, maybe was it around 2006 that you had the other office over on Florence and Lakewood?
Yes, it was around 2006.
Right around there, one of those. Yep. I remember my buddy Jose, he goes by Rock. Okay. He invites me to go. He said, you should come check this out, man. We're making a lot of money in alarms. I'm like, sure, I'll go check it out. So I went, and you were training and you were doing the pitch, bro, I hadn't even met my wife back then.
Yeah.
On the doors, right? And I was thinking, this dude is smooth, man. Like if you could learn the pitch like this guy, you're gonna make sales. And then I went and I shadowed my buddy Rock that particular day. And I don't know what happened. I never went back. But I was close, and I was at Skyline at that office. Yeah, bro. It was like an orientation. And I went to shadow him. I don't know if we went in a van or what the deal was.
Well, we missed the boat on that, not getting you, man.
Yeah. I don't know what happened, bro, but that was the case. And I guess I had done door knocking before, but my experience with the prior company wasn't a good one. So I was kind of like, But one of the things that I've realized, and tell me if you agree with this, have you seen a lot of people that maybe from other business, real estate or mortgage, maybe the market goes down or just something bad happens, that they use home security, door-to-door sales to get out of the rut they're in and, in a fairly quick fashion?
100%. And what's great about our platform is the commission is high enough.
Right.
You could scale it. You can learn it within a week, and you can get paid within a week. So I think that's what makes our industry different than any other industry out there.
True.
Because typically, when you get paid high commission, it takes a while to learn it, and it takes a while to get paid.
That's true.
Like real estate's a good example of that,
Yeah.
right? Real estate, yeah, it pays you a lot of commission, hard to scale as an individual, and then to top it off, it's probably going to take you 6 months to a year to learn it.
To get your groove and
So a lot of people don't have that kind of time.
Right.
What I love about our platform is we give everybody a shot.
Yes.
I'm a byproduct of one person giving me a shot. I believe that in life, you just need a person that gives you a shot. You need a leader that believes in you, that's going to be patient.
Yep.
You need a system
Yep.
that allows you to be successful. But at 15 years old, like I told you about when I was at the call center, what I didn't tell you was that previous to that job, I got declined 16 times.
Oh, wow.
Every interview, and that's because I was so shy and so timid that during the interviews, I get really nervous and I couldn't complete sentences. And when I would start stumbling, I'd get really hot and I start sweating.
Oh, shit.
So they must have thought I was on drugs, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
finally,
yeah.
my buddy of mine that I was going to high school with says, "Hey, Ed, when I found this company," he knew the situation I was in. He says, "I found this company, man, they hire anybody. Just show up. I promise you they're going to hire you." And I'm like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Dude, I've sent the last 7 people there. They've all gone hired." I said, "All right, cool." So I get up on my beat-up ass Nissan Sentra 1982 that my mom would lend me. It had no shocks. I'm driving down Firestone Boulevard because it's on Santa Fe Springs. I get there and I'm already kind of hot because I didn't have any air conditioning. I had those
Right.
roll-up kind of windows.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah.
man, I hope I don't sweat. So I get into this interview. 2 minutes into it, the guy's handing me over a paper towel.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
thinking to myself, damn, he's noticing that I'm sweating.
Yeah.
So then I really got in my head about it, and I started really stumbling, and now I really started sweating. I came out of that interview, I was drenched like I just ran a marathon. I was wearing a white collar shirt, drenched in sweat. You
Right.
could see through it.
Damn.
And of course, they don't hire me.
Yeah.
So I'm going back to my car, and I'm discouraged.
Yeah.
And I stop by the restroom, start washing my face, cleaning up, and I just started praying to God. I said, "God, just give me a shot. Give me a shot, find me a job, and I promise you, I'll work harder than anybody's ever worked, and I'll always praise your name, but please, I need to help my family." And as I walk out that door, there's a gentleman outside. He says, "Hey, when do you start, kid?" And I say, "You guys are full." And he starts laughing. He's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, no, you guys are full." He's like, "Who told you that?" I'm like, "The guy I just interviewed with." He's like, "Come with me." He takes me to the HR room, and he says to the gentleman, he says, "I need you to hire this kid. I need him to start tomorrow at 3 p.m.
What?
And that's the same person that 6 years later helps me start the security company.
No way.
So I'm a firm believer that in life, you just need somebody to give you a shot. You need somebody to give you a system. You
Wow.
need somebody to give you the patience, to trust you and to believe in you.
That's cool.
And that's that. And I work as hard as I work today because of that. Now I get to pay it forward, and I give people that shot
Yes.
that nobody else gives them to. Because there's a lot of, in sales, doesn't matter what sales you do, you could make money in sales,
Yes.
right? You can make
Yes.
big money. But there's a lot of sales jobs that unless you look a certain way, unless you communicate a certain way, unless you know somebody that's going to get you in there,
Yep.
you ain't getting that shot.
Right.
And in our industry, we give everybody a shot, man. My number one sales guy, if we were picking a team, he'd be the last one you were picking because he kind of looks like a thug.
Really?
Right? He's got tats, he wears baggy clothes, and but he's our number one, right? My biggest leader of a team, he looks like he's coming out of an Abercrombie and Fitch model magazine, right?
Right.
Then you got, 60-year-olds, you got 18-year-olds, you got Hispanic, Black, Asian, Caucasian, like everyone. There's no excuse on why you're not succeeding at our company. It's so diverse. Now we got
That's cool.
family members working together.
That's cool.
We got dads working with their daughters.
Wow.
Husbands working with their spouses, and it's it's very fulfilling, man.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
Like the money's the byproduct of it, but
Sure.
just when you could make a difference for people's lives, it's what I love about what I do. I'm literally paying it forward.
That's cool.
I get to live watching them. I'm reliving my
Right.
20s again.
That's true.
Because when I see them making their dreams happen, I remember when I made my dreams happen.
That's
and I'm
cool,
like, man, I get to pay it forward
And it's
now.
the same industry too.
Same industry, yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. So
Yeah.
how did you go from sales in home security to being the owner? How was that transition?
So when I came in, I was the owner. I was a sub dealer. I just didn't have the license.
Got it.
So think of it as the guy that got me into the business. He was like the broker, right? But you can't do this in real estate. But in an alarm business, you could have your own company within the big master dealership. So he was a master dealer. I was under him. And for 5 years, I did very well. I made a ton of money. And then in 2004, I'm sorry, our industry got hit with its recession. Every industry has a recession. And all of a sudden, they just gave everybody a big old pay cut. And they put all these new stipulations or requirements to make it really hard.
Yeah.
So, and at the time, real estate was freaking going off.
Yeah.
So everyone got out from the alarm business and they got into real estate.
That's true.
The first 5 years, man, everybody and their moms was doing security, man. It was so easy that everyone was doing it. You know, no credit checks, you could sign up anyone and their moms.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was just, no regulations. And then it got strict. And everybody left. And the guy that got me into the business, his margin really got cut thin. And he said, Edwin, this isn't worth it for me. You have to go direct.
Yeah.
And then that's when I finally went direct. And that's when I thought of the opportunity, right? I was like, wait a minute. This is my opportunity to double down because everybody's leaving. I rather, if you ask me, do I like it really easy and have a lot of competition, or do I like it a little harder and have no competition? I'll take the little harder and no competition all day. And that's what I did. So we took over in 2004. Everybody got into real estate. I stayed in what I was doing. I doubled up.
And then in 2008, when the real estate crash happened, a lot of those
they all
guys
came back. Yeah, same thing. So they all came back.
That's right.
And by then, really, we started growing. Exactly.
Nice.
It's exactly what happened. So.
You know what's funny? A lot of people. I know a guy, Pedro. We both know him.
Yeah.
He was in real estate, and in 2008, he tells me the story. He says, I went back to alarms.
Yeah.
He says, I went back to the doors, but that got me back on my feet within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing about this platform.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And with me in 2019, we got hit financially the worst that I've been hit in 15 years. I went from being the man, making a lot of money, to like losing just about everything. I mean, like Murphy's Law, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I told my wife, she had never worked since we've been together. I said, I'm going to need you to start working again, which meant door knocking. That's what she did. She went door knocking, bro, made $8,000 her first month.
Yeah.
Boom. She just wore it up.
She's a rock star, yeah.
Then I was trying to get a new MLM company started with a friend, and the technology wasn't working. It was a technology company. Long story short, didn't work out. And I tell my partner, bro, I got to bounce. I got to do other things, man. So I tell my wife, hey, take me to the office, teach me the pitch, and I'm going to go out there. And so she teaches me the pitch, her and Ray.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then I shadow my wife for a day and a half. She shows me a sale the first 30 minutes of the first day. And I'm entertaining the kid, teaching him some karate because they had a karate bag outside, Downey. Then the next day, the second day, I shadow her for half a day. I said, I got this. I go, I don't make a sale. The next day is Saturday. We're supposed to go together, but we couldn't find a babysitter. I said, you stay home, I go work. My first day knocking home security on my own. So I just find a nice area in Downey. Little did I know that some people in security say that area has been hit too much. The people with experience, they won't necessarily hit it as often. So I didn't know any better, so I just went. I remember looking at the neighborhood saying, I'm going to be out here for about 8 hours because I'm a hard worker, bro. I said, and somebody are in this neighborhood or a few people need what I'm selling, and I'm going to find those people. And it was a beautiful day, sunny day, and I went door knocking, boom, 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 boom. And I got my first sale like 4 hours into it.
Nice.
And so, but about a month into it, I'm out producing everybody in the office other than Ray.
Yeah.
He's the only one I can't outproduce. But I'm getting $2,500 weekly checks, bro.
Yeah.
$3,000 weekly checks and stuff. And I'm like, I tell my wife, all right, you don't have to work no more. I got this. Then I transitioned to the solar industry in 2020, April. And then I just applied what I learned there, and I door knocked for 11 weeks while I built my team. But my point is that me and our mutual friend Pedro, my wife, and a bunch of people that I've known, they get into home security, and as long as they're willing to learn and put the effort in, you could go out there and get out of that rut fast. And I experienced it myself. My wife didn't. So now you have been doing home security. Solar is a very natural transition. How did you guys get into solar? Because I know you guys are crushing it now in solar too.
So funny thing. So anytime you're going to do something big with your life, you're going to have to go through some pain.
Sure.
Life and pain are inseparable.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the faster you learn that pain is part of it, you're going to do pretty well for yourself.
Right.
In fact, I often say the difference between average people and elite people is elite people can handle more stress, can handle more pain, can handle resistance.
Yes.
The reason they can handle it is because when the pain comes, they stand in front of it and they push forward and they focus on what they can control. And they have the faith that all these things that seem impossible, the right people are going to show up.
Yep. Yep.
For me, I've always felt like God's going to put the right people. If I could just focus on what I could focus, right? Well, most people run away from the pain. Most people run away from resistance. The minute resistance comes, they run.
Yes.
Pain comes, they run.
Right.
Well, if they run, they can never build the muscles.
Right.
The only way to build the muscles and to cultivate what I call the 3 skill sets that are the most important skill sets you could ever have to sustain success for a long time are grit, fortitude, resiliency. The reason they're the best skill sets you could ever have is because no one could ever take that away from you. It doesn't matter if your industry takes a dump.
Yep.
You'll do well because you already have grit, you already have resiliency, you already have fortitude, right? No one can take that away from you. And the beauty of that is you're also building a story that you can tell the masses, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's the other part is that, I love when Ed Mylett says your test is your testimony.
Right.
Right? Instead of the victim, like we were learning today, you become the healer, right?
Yes.
You can show people, look, this is what I went through and this is how I overcame it.
Right.
But at the time, you have to go through that pain. So for me, the reason I tell you that long story is that at the end of 2020, I went through the hardest, like you did in 2019, I went through the toughest part of my life in business.
In 2020, you said?
Yep, it's at the end of 2020, I had the perfect storm hit me. I was on top of the hill, like I'd never been doing better. And within a 3-month period, I had to renegotiate my contract with Brinks Home Security. Except this time I didn't have any leverage, meaning I didn't have nobody to, I didn't have anywhere to go, so they basically had all the leverage.
Wow.
So they paid me about $350 less per deal.
Damn.
So if you do the numbers, we were doing 20,000 accounts a year. So that's like $7 million gone, profit.
Damn.
So now I got to give everybody kind of a pay cut. Not kind of, I got to give everybody a pay cut.
Yeah.
On top of that, my #1 team at the time gets recruited by my biggest competitor. They got a big sign-on bonus. And I was a little distracted at the time, so I didn't see it coming. I thought we were good, and they ended up leaving.
Damn.
And that was my fault for being distracted, right? I should have paid better attention. I could have anticipated if I would have been a little more present. So 25% of my business I lose to my #1 competitor. And then the other part of my distraction that I didn't realize is 25% of my sales force had gone to solar. And then 15% didn't want to work anymore because they were freaking killing it with crypto.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I went from, and the worst thing that could happen when you're scaling a company is lose your production. So we went from 20,000 to 8,000.
Damn.
And then at the time, like I've done, story of my life is, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to figure it out. And I remember saying to myself, I don't know how we're going to build the solar company, and I'm the last person that should be building a construction company. I don't even know how to change a tire in a car. So now I'm starting a construction company.
Wow.
And I said, I don't know how I'm going to figure this out, but we're going to figure it out. We're just going to start taking action towards it, and we're going to figure it out, but we're going to start a solar company. And then for the next 10 months, I probably worked the hardest I've ever worked. 6 days a week, 18, 20-hour days. I was probably sleeping 4 hours a day.
Damn.
And I mean consistent. I wasn't seeing the results. I got some results. We were pacing towards, we had gone from 20,000 on the alarm side back to 8,500. We were pacing going back to 12, but 12,000, I'm barely breaking even.
Yeah.
Right? Because the other thing I had to do is I had to make a decision. Do I cut the staff in half?
Right.
Or do I have faith that I can rebuild it? And the decision really came down to, if I would have cut the staff in half, the only guy making real money again would have been me. And
Right.
like that thing doesn't drive me anymore. If I'm the only one making money, like I've already done that for 24 years,
Right.
like it doesn't drive me anymore. What drives me is being able to see people make the kind of money that I'm used to making.
Yes.
And I knew that the only way that could happen is if I could build the company big enough so that everybody's dream can fit inside of it. So I said, we're not laying off anyone. We're going to build this thing back, and we're going to build it bigger than it's ever. And I started just declaring, you know, one of the biggest, the number one secret to success, it starts with hope. You have to have the desire to want to do something great with your life. That's the hope. Hope means something you're looking forward to. And I started declaring, I just started speaking it into existence. I said, we're going to do in the next 2 to 3 years, I actually have the recording. If you go on my Instagram, you'll see the recording from 2 years ago. At my lowest point, I started declaring, we're going to do in the next 3 to 5 years what's taken us 24 years to do. And while we do it, we're going to build the most 6-figure, 7-figure a year earners that our industry has ever produced.
Wow.
And I just started saying it. You know, did I believe it at first? Kinda. I wasn't like fully believing it, but I had to get behind something.
Yes, yes.
And I just started saying it and saying it, and then, you know, the work comes after the belief comes after the work.
Yes.
So even though I wasn't really seeing the result right away, because I'd done it before, when you put that kind of action towards something, I mean, I just started taking massive action. And what I do know about taking massive action is there's always a return.
Yes.
You do nothing, you get nothing.
Right.
But if you just start planting seeds, there's going to be a harvest.
Yes.
The problem is most people don't realize that it takes 6 months to a year to see a result, right? Most people, they'll do it for 3 months, 4 months, and then they quit.
Yes.
And they quit right before they're going to get that blessing. So I already knew how hard I was going to have to go. And I remember this inner voice telling me, Edwin, it's supposed to be hard. You're trying to be $1 billion company, and you thought this was going to be a cakewalk. You're supposed to go through this damn pain you're going through. And that's what kept me going. Sure enough, 10 months later, boom, it just takes off like a rocket ship. That number one sales team that my competitor took all came back, bigger than ever. All these people that I had been working on that hadn't committed yet, all committed at the same time.
Wow.
And then we went from, you know, we did 12,000 that year. We did 12 to 30.
Damn.
And this year we're on pace to 60,000 accounts.
Wow.
Which is huge. I mean, we've never even come close to that.
That's triple what you were doing your best year.
Yep, that's triple what we're doing our best year. But it took me
Plus
going
you also
through that
added
pain.
solar.
And then at the same time, I'm adding solar, right? So the first year we just did it as a sales engine. And then I quickly realized that, man, if we don't do the installs, we're not going to be able to fulfill the type of experience that I'm used to giving my salespeople. Because I look at my salespeople as my number one client.
So you were using other installers?
I was using other installers. We were just a sales engine. But, you know, the thing about the construction business is, man, they don't get back to you quick enough.
Right.
You know, it's like, I'm about being responsive. Like, our sales guys are our number one client. I teach all of our operational people, hey, these are our number one client. Don't look at them as salespeople. They're our clients, and we got to provide the best service possible for them. And if we can provide the best service possible, they'll never leave. So I said, man, we got to be the installer if we're going to provide the kind of service that I'm used to giving our guys. And, you know, we started our own install company in 2022. I joked that in 2022, that big year we had with 30,000 accounts, I didn't even enjoy it because I was getting kicked in the balls every day by solar. I mean, I was getting my ass kicked every day. I mean, you talk about just like, so I'm kicking ass in alarms, but in solar, I'm just like, man, we're just getting our asses kicked because why you learn the business, right?
Right.
But the way I went into solar is the same thing. I didn't come into solar to do something small. Like if I would have came in to do 100 installs a month, that would have been, it wouldn't have been as hard.
Right.
From the get-go, I'm like, we're going to do 1,000. And the way I work and the way I like to run my business is first you got to build the foundation. You got to build the operations.
Yes.
A lot of investing,
yes.
right? There's this misconception in solar that all you need is the sales arm and all you need is the install. If you're going to do 40 a month, that's all you need.
Right.
But if you're going to do 1,000 a month, you better have a kick-ass operations.
Yes.
And if you're going to have a kick-ass operations, then bring out the checkbook.
Yeah.
And you know, part of that was hiring some of the wrong people. You know, I thought they were the right people, and they weren't. And man, the first 6 months was just an entire shit show.
Damn.
I mean, the only reason my sales guys didn't leave is just because of their loyalty to me.
Yeah.
And you know, I've great credibility with them, so they believed in me. But man, it was not good. And then 2023 hits, and all the right people started showing up. Our operational people, you know, it took me 18 years to build the operational staff that I have in alarms. My solar team now is just as good as my people in the alarms.
Wow.
It took me a year to build that, but we got it.
Wow.
And that's the other thing. You know, people see, like, they probably see the fact that we're already doing really well in solar, and they think, well, how could they? It must have been easy, right? It's like at some point you have to pay the price.
Oh yeah.
And I've already paid the price so much in alarms that it wasn't, even though it was very hard, I could do it so much quicker in in solar because I'd already paid the price.
Right.
But it's not, you know, if you've never paid the price, don't think that in a year you're just gonna do what we were able to do in a year.
Right, right.
You know, at some point in some industry, you've had to pay the price.
Yes.
That's why some people, if it's from real estate, if they're coming from real estate, and they get into this new industry, and they were kicking ass at real estate, and they worked their asses off in real estate, they could easily kick ass in this new arena.
Yep.
But it's because they paid the price before.
They had to pay the price somewhere.
Somewhere you're going to pay the price.
For sure, yes, 100%. Yeah, sometimes we see people that get started over here, and I tell my people, look, comparison is a thief of joy. You might be a guy with very little experience, but you got this guy from another industry comes in, he's got contacts, he's got credibility, he's got experience. Don't compare yourself to him, right? Maybe he's scaling faster, and that happened to me in the beginning too. But one of the things is my consistency, eventually I caught him up and smoked them, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, don't compare yourself. So
I got a guy from Herbalife in 4 months in my alarm site. He's made 80 grand.
Wow.
4 months.
Damn.
But he paid the price at Herbalife for 10 years.
Yes.
He was there for 10 years.
Oh,
the most he ever made was 150 grand in 10 years.
Damn.
But you know, those guys are grinding.
Oh, yes.
So in 4 months, he comes in my industry and just crushes it. And everybody thinks that they can do what he did. I'm like, well, he already paid the price.
Yes, yes.
Just like you did. And when you went, right? You all of a sudden, you had paid the price in network marketing. You got into alarms and you kicked ass.
Right,
So,
exactly. Well, I know that you got an interview right now with who?
Yes. Inc. 500.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Yeah. Company grew 1,300%.
1,300%. Yeah. Wow. See, that's impressive. So I know that they're probably already outside, man. So I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you so much, brother. I could ask you a million questions. We could be here all day.
Maybe we'll do part two.
We'll do part two, man. Thanks a lot,
Still
my friend.
a lot we got to talk about.
Thank you, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys follow Edwin. His information to follow him online is in the description. And with that being said, I'll see you at the top or from the top. Take care.